This presentation will highlight the main concept of my essay. The question I chose is, are McRobbie and Thornton right in suggesting that change in the structure and nature of society in late modernity make the concept of a moral panic redundant, critically discussed with reference to theory and examples? By Lauren Pollington. This presentation will present highlights of theories and examples made in the essay, key events and examples of moral panic through the years, so that's past and present, examples of readings I have referenced from, and a conclusion. My essay starts by discussing the stages of moral panic. There are 7 stages altogether. The first stage is primary deviancy and minor acts of criminality. The second stage is media coverage. The third stage is when media coverage becomes amplified and basically over-exaggerated on news. Stage 4 is basically amplification of deviancy due to harder policing. Stage 5 is the symbolization by the media, for example, folk devils and mods and rockers. Stage 6 is amplification of all of the stages. And finally, stage 7 is full moral panic. So a group or a person defined by society and fashioned by the media. These stages were created by Stan Cohen. Stan Cohen is a criminologist, and basically he represents crime in the media and the effect it has on society. He has written many articles and journals and books featuring moral panic, mods and rockers, folk devils, and crime in the media. This next slide presents 3 quotations I've taken from my essay. They are examples of moral panic and basically moral panic in society. These criminologists are Robbie and Thornton, Cohen and Critcher. I've taken these quotes from articles and books that I have used when researching for my essay. I will probably go into more detail later on in the presentation about what readings I took them from, but I've used them in my essay. The next slide will be on theories and examples that I've taken these quotes from. So the theories and examples, as said before, I've taken from these criminologists that I've been studying for the essay, and I've included a few more that are also mentioned in my essay. McRobbie and Thornton have shown the idea that moral panic was used as a marketing strategy. They have asked, did it really have this kind of effect on society, or was the media over-exaggerating all the details? And then Cohen, so Stan Cohen, explained that media create this image of youth through postmodernism. So looking at the youth of today, moral panic is not entirely focused on them. In today's society, deviance is in fact seen as normal. This is true, whereas in the past, deviancy was highly controversial and caused a lot of moral panic and the issues behind it. Whereas nowadays, in today's society, you wouldn't find that, criminal deviancy was a huge moral panic, especially when it comes from the youth. Reeves and Campbell present the idea of inequality and the sense of moral panic amongst society. For example, the power in America. So Ronald Reagan, for example, the former president of the USA, he created a huge moral panic on drugs. And because he brought up the idea, of drugs, so would the media have brought up how drugs are obviously really bad and associated it with Ronald Reagan, creating this big over-exaggeration of how horrifyingly bad drugs are. Criminologist Critcher looks into testing where moral panic still arises. So MPs nowadays doesn't mob huge chunks of public opinions. He looks at drug testing and the way moral panic was constructed. For example, Leah Betts. She was a young girl. She died after taking one ecstasy tablet, and only once, with her friends. However, this is quite a bad kind of, taking drugs is really bad for you. But the media have taken this story and overly exaggerated it, making parents think, oh, we can't have my children going out and this youth going out and getting drunk or taking drugs. There were a few examples of raves and outdoor parties that have included the youth taking a lot of recreational drugs. This slide, it is basically the readings. I have made references from articles, journals and books, and a few websites that I've taken sort of article clippings from. I have used mostly articles for my essay, so I've taken 2 of the main articles I've used and put them onto this slide, and that's by McRobbie and Thornton and Stanley Cohen. On this next, I've taken samples of articles and a website that I've taken from. Obviously there are more readings on my essay in the reference section. Are McRobbie and Thornton right in thinking moral panic is redundant? I believe McRobbie and Thornton are right in the sense that moral panic is redundant. In the past, criminal deviancy and moral panic were a big deal, as if you saw some youth on the street causing some kind of problem, or mugging someone, or spray painting a wall, it was a big deal. If there was a bunch of teenagers sort of mobbing one area, that was taken as a moral panic, and that's where the mods and the rockers came into it, and they were labelled as the wild ones because they were constantly seen as doing all these bad things, and because of the media coverage, it was taking over exaggeration, and so they were labelled as criminal deviants. However, in today's society, you wouldn't find that same kind of issue. If you see the youth on the street drinking or taking drugs, of course it's a worry, but it wouldn't be taken as a moral panic. The media wouldn't necessarily focus on that kind of issue. Of course, moral panic is still about, in the sense of harsher crimes, bigger crimes, like say kidnap, or missing white girl syndrome. But in the sense of the youth and criminal deviancy, moral panic is redundant. These are a few references I've taken from my essay that I've also used in this presentation.